Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
And hopefully you are joining us at maybe it's breakfast, maybe it's lunch, maybe it's dinner, maybe you're driving down the road, maybe you are just doing some housework, whatever
taking
you
a
are.
Nap.
If you're taking a nap, you're not listening. Don't nap and listen. I don't recommend that. But wherever you are, however you are, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, if you have not done so already, please take a moment, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this episode. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and make sure you like, go ahead and make sure you subscribe and leave a comment below. Finally, don't forget, you can be a part of the podcast too. Email podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com.
Love it.
Now, it's all the housekeeping out of the way. I've got one more announcement. One more announcement before we dive into all of our stuff. I'm putting this early so that if you dip out later, you're still getting this part because sometimes, stuff comes up.
Love it.
Next week, we are really excited. We're going to have a really, really special guest, and I want to let you know now so that you can send in questions and comments now, so that we've got, some things that maybe you'd be wondering for us to ask. But we're going to have Dr. Mike Licona. Dr. Mike Licona is an author. He's written one of the best books on the resurrection called The Resurrection of Jesus, a new historiographical approach, I think is the subtitle. And his most recent book is called Jesus Contradicted, and it talks about why there are differences in the Gospels. And he has spent a lot of time looking into Greek biography and the genre and the way those things come together to help us understand the Bible a little bit better. It brings up some interesting questions when we get to things like inerrancy, how we read the Gospels, how we read the New Testament, all of this good stuff. It's going to be a super fascinating discussion. So please email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know your questions that you would like us to ask Dr. Mike Licona. But let's jump in, Matt.
Yes.
To the news.
Yes. World Series starts tonight, Friday.
Baseball?
Okay. Yep. So that's exciting. It's the Dodgers and the Yankees, two of the most storied franchises in the MLB, competing against each other.
What is, they have a lot of stories?
They have stories to tell.
Them?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
Wait, who is it again? I'm sorry.
Dodgers and Yankees.
Okay.
West Coast versus East Coast.
Oh, like a rap battle.
Like a rap battle. Actually, in between innings, they're going to do a rap battle with players every single.
Really?
No.
I would watch it if they did. That sounds much better.
I love it. No, they're not. They're not going to. But that's exciting.
Is it?
It is.
Like what? So this is like the Super Bowl
This
of
is
baseball?
like the Super Bowl of baseball.
Okay.
Yep. With like the two most popular teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Super Bowl, how's football going this year? I haven't watched any of it.
Yeah. My favorite team is terrible.
Who's your favorite team?
The 49ers.
Oh, okay.
San Francisco 49ers. They have a lot of injuries. Their top running back and their top two wide receivers, they're hurt. They're out.
Well,
actually, all of football right now, it seems like there are more injuries this year. And not like all head injuries, just different random injuries and things keeping people out. More this year than I think
Achilles
I've
tendon
seen.
torn.
Yeah, broken ribs, pulled hammies,
Ooh.
people getting
Hammies.
pneumonia.
Pneumonia?
Pneumonia.
How do you
yeah.
get pneumonia while playing football?
Well, I don't necessarily think he got it while playing football. He got it and therefore can't play football.
Well, that makes more sense. I was hoping
And
that
it's
he got
happening
it
to a lot of
playing
like
it.
stars. So it's not like it's impacting teams a lot. The Broncos, you guys, we're from Colorado here on the Faith Life podcast. So the Broncos are our local team and they are not terrible. It is kind of exciting.
Wait, they're not?
They are not terrible.
Are they going to the Super Bowl?
Well, it's still a little bit early. But
I mean, are they on the trajectory?
They're on the trajectory to not be the worst team anymore, or one of the worst teams.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm proud of them. Right now, they're second in the AFC West. Now that's only 4 teams that they have in each little division, so second isn't necessarily saying a lot. But they're above 500 right now, so that's great.
Above 500.
Yeah. You don't know what that means?
I have no idea what that means. 500
I realize I'm using insider language.
They're above 500 feet above sea level.
Their winning percentage. So
500%.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I know it's weird, right? So
this is why I don't follow football. This makes no sense.
In a lot of sports, it's point number, right? Decimal point number is like how you're tracking percentages.
Like
whether
RBI.
It's your hitting percentage. No, RBIs would just be a solid whole number.
Oh.
But your winning percentage, your batting average, things like that are counted that way. So all this to say, the Broncos have won more than half of their games so far this year.
500% of them.
Yes.
500% of the games they've played, they have won.
Oh,
good job,
goodness.
Broncos. Now, when it comes to
Broncos, Barack Obama.
I was gonna say that we've got politics on the brain. We're gonna be talking politics today as we're getting closer to this election. I think there's some really good questions about how a Christian can engage or how should Christians engage. But one last thing about the Super Bowl: who's gonna perform this year? Have they said that yet? Do they have their schedule mapped out like 10 years in advance, do you think?
No.
How quick do they get it figured out?
Who
is, and if you could pick, like, who's your number one, I wish they would perform the Super Bowl halftime show?
MXPX.
Oh, what odds do they have?
0. And I say that only because we went to an MXPX concert back in April.
We did.
This
it was
year,
great.
With 5 Iron Frenzy and the Ataris.
Yeah.
And MXPX actually, now, whether you like their genre of music or not, that's beside the point. They've been performing for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And they still look and sound just as good as they did 20 years ago. And it's all live. It's not like lip sync, stuff like
great.
that.
They were great.
And so it was a really fun show. And I would love for the world to get to experience actually good, entertaining, semi-wholesome music.
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar is 2025 Super Bowl.
Okay. He's good, right?
What does he do?
He's a rapper.
Okay. But like what songs?
Wait. Is Kendrick Lamar, isn't he a Christian, or am I thinking of somebody else?
American rapper and songwriter, regarded as one of the most influential hip-hop artists of his time.
Yeah. But is he who's the one that, no, I'm thinking of Lecrae. He's a Christian, right?
Yeah. Yes. You're thinking of Lecrae.
Kendrick Lamar is not a Christian.
Lecrae NF is really
and that's
good.
really good.
I just, I don't know the right word. I was about to say exposed, but that word has other meanings here. My children to KJ52
I don't
yesterday.
know who that is.
He is a Christian rapper.
Okay.
He's white.
Okay.
He sounds very similar to Eminem. And so I had Grady pull up Lose Yourself by Eminem and just like get to one section in there, just a part of it. And then it's pronounced 5-2 by KJ52 and play a part of that. And like it was Grady and Oliver, 2 of my kids. I just mentioned their name on like a public podcast. Is that
that's okay?
I don't know, whatever.
Anyway,
they sound super similar. And so it's like the quality of musicianship that Eminem brings, but with like actual good morals and values and ethics.
What a
in
thought
his lyrics.
that would be, because Eminem's great, and I don't know if there's much that can compare to him.
You know, have you heard of the name Connor Price?
No.
Okay, he's another white rapper. He's super trending on social media. Like TikTok is his, like that's where he's gained all his popularity. I just found out yesterday he's a believer.
Oh, that's cool.
And he has a new song that he just released with Maverick City.
Oh, yeah, Maverick City.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun. All that to say, no, I don't think Kendrick Lamar is
a Christian.
Do
you know who I would love to perform the halftime show at the Super Bowl?
You want Weird Al to perform.
I do.
Yeah.
What are the odds of that ever happening?
Probably greater than MXPX.
Well, that's a good point.
Weird Al does have a bigger following.
He has a tour coming up. He's playing Red Rocks. I tried to get tickets and they sold out instantly at Red Rocks.
That's impressive.
So like I could not get tickets and I was really sad about that. So, you know, I think it's possible.
I'm wondering, in thinking through halftime shows in the past.
Yeah.
And this is a weird thing for us to talk about in October. Maybe we talk about this again, closer to it. But it seems to be older artists. People have been around a while. Maybe they're getting a little bit washed up.
Yeah.
And they want to like rejuvenate their career. Maybe they're running out of money. Now, I did hear that a lot of them, they actually maybe even will pay to perform.
Really?
Because it's marketing for them.
Because it's such a
it's
good...
huge marketing.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
I think last year, Usher at least did not get paid for it, but it was a marketing tool for him. Anyway, I have not been happy with a halftime performance in a long time. I think it was 2022 was kind of decent, but not great. That was all
that
the
the one with all the rappers? That was kind of fun, though.
It was fun. And
that wasn't bad.
Yeah. But man, there's been some terrible ones.
Our producer says Taylor Swift during the Chiefs game after the breakup.
Can I... Taylor Swift is not my favorite.
No? I'm shocked.
In a lot of ways, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to, eliminate some of our
alienate our fan
alienate
base.
our viewership and listenership.
Oh my goodness.
T-Swizzle, I got a lot of issues with.
Okay.
That's her nickname.
T-Swizz.
Yeah.
Like Maverick City, we say Mav City.
Yeah.
But exactly. why do we abbreviate Maverick to Mav, but not City to Si? Mav Si. Neither of them are real words.
So what else is in the news these days?
You know what? Everything else in the news is politics, and I think with that being our bigger topic today, I'm going to skip that because we're going to hit on some of these news segments as we talk about our main topic today. So before that, let's talk a little bit about the Bible.
Okay.
How's your Bible reading going, Matt?
Good. I'm still caught up. Still doing the daily Bible reading plan that we got going on.
Now, if you, we're almost at the end of the year, but if you want to join us in our Read the Bible in a Year plan, there's still time. You can click the link in the description of the podcast or in the description of the YouTube video. Join in, read with us. This is something weird. Lately, in the past week, I've gotten like 2 or 3 random friend requests in the Bible app from people I don't know, and I haven't said yes to them. And I don't know if it's because of this plan. Like, do we have strangers that we don't know reading with us? I don't know.
I don't know if I've seen. I'll look into that.
I need to check a little more about, are they friending us through that? But it's possible.
I don't know.
Spooky.
Yeah. So today's Friday. So yesterday, Thursday, we started reading in the book of Job. Which every time, right? The surface reading of Job is so shady, right? Like
so shady. Wait, why?
Why would God make a bet with Job with Satan about Job, right? Like that's on the surface reading.
Okay.
Every time I start this,
here's the other question: Is it
a bet?
Is it bet? So here's the interesting. There's in the Hebrew. There's the definite article on that. Mm-hmm. The Satan or the accuser.
Yeah.
Is it Satan as we know Satan, or is it another angelic being? Like, there's some weird questions about. Right. Here's the biggest question I have with Job is, what genre is it? Because I don't necessarily know the answer. And knowing what the genre is, I think definitely will inform the way we interpret it a little bit. Because to me, well, first of all, you've got these long dialogues with all of his friends who are speaking in almost this like perfect Hebrew poetry, which is not how humans talk, right? We don't sit 100%. Perfectly reciting in a poetic form. So at the very least, I don't think we're getting like I think we're getting an elevated version of what was said by the friends. Agreed. Now, where I come down with a question, and this might be the first hot take of the day, is it intended to be a true story? Or is it intended to be a literary parable? Right. And or a musical. Our producer says, is it a musical? Yeah. Yes, Job the musical coming soon to Broadway.
So it's traditionally categorized as Wisdom literature.
Yes.
So Nathan had his big old drink from Panera this morning that was full of caffeine.
It wasn't Panera, it was Ziggy's.
Whatever, same thing. It was like this toxic looking green thing, but full of caffeine. And I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee this morning. And I think it's having like the opposite effect where instead of like alerting the senses and waking us up, it's just like nothing makes sense anymore. And
nothing makes sense anymore.
So wisdom literature is typically how Job is, but obviously when you read it, it is poetic.
Right.
Especially the long discourse from all the friends. It's super poetic. So it's almost like this blend of genres, which from my initial perspective makes me think that you probably shouldn't read it literally.
Okay.
Now I know some people are going to come at me, bro, with that one.
I think it's really important, real quick, to clarify that literally is not the same as true.
Correct.
And that we are not, if you say something is not literal, we don't say it's not true. We're not saying it's not inspired. We're not saying it's not inerrant. We're not saying it's not the word of God.
Yeah.
Literally is not the equivalent of all those. Literally just means it actually straightforward happened this way.
So when you think of Paul, when he said, I've become all things to all people,
right.
Paul literally did not change his form to be all things to all people. Right. But it is true that he would interact with people differently in order that he might lead them to salvation.
Right. Or when, let's look at another book, Revelation. When we see a beast coming out of the sea with all these heads, we don't literally say there's a Cthulhu coming up.
But I sure hope so.
I mean, that'd be cool. But even John tells us, like, the 10 heads represent 10 kingdoms, right? So when something represents something else, that's metaphorically, not literally, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to read the Bible as non-literally in some parts, which is very important because the Bible's not a monolithic one thing. And so I think people get, and this is going to tie in a little bit next week, we're kind of jumping ahead, but I think people get a little bit upset where if I say, I don't read the Bible, the Job literally, that means I don't read like the Gospels literally. Right. And it's like, well, those are very different books and genres and styles. Yeah. And I think another big thing with Job, the fact that he's got all these kids and then they all die. And in the end, he just has new kids and everything's okay again. It's like, if this was a true story, my kids all die. I had more kids, so everything's good again. It's like, that doesn't really help.
All those memories and relationship and love.
Right. Unless they were like the literal kids resurrected again.
Right.
Yeah. But I see that's I thought of like Pet Cemetery. I think, they come back like monsters.
Yeah, with Job. Yeah. In reading it, some of the things that stand out later on, at least, like once you get through it all and you then can take time to reflect on it. Obviously, it talks about and addresses the problem of evil in our world and like righteous people suffering, the whole when bad things happen to good people. But I think for me, I look at Job's response to it, and then I look at my own life and I say, do I respond that way when like inconveniences come up in my life? Like I have not had anything happen to me the way that it's happened to Job. And Job responded with hope and faith in his creator. And so when bad things happen to me, am I responding that way? Or am I just like, oh, poor, pitiful me. God, why would you do this to me? Right. Or am I saying, who am I to question God? God, how can I honor you and glorify you in the midst of this?
And I think that's the key part. I think if we get bogged down in the question of, did this really happen? We're missing what it's actually trying to communicate, which is how do we respond when there's problems.
Another thing, and we're not there yet in Job. We still have a couple more days to finish it off, but who are you surrounding yourself with? Like, who are your friends?
Who are your friends?
What type of influence, support, encouragement are they pointing you towards Christ or pulling you away from him? I think that's important things. Those are important things for us to consider as we read through Job. Those are some maybe application that can happen is we evaluate our life in light of it.
Now, some people will say there are dinosaurs in Job.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that's fantastic.
Are they dinosaurs?
Sure.
They breathe fire.
Define dinosaur. Like
fire breathing. Well, there's a part where it's something that breathes fire, and then there's something where it talks about the behemoth.
Right.
Right. We don't know what creature they're talking about. Some have said dinosaurs. Some have said rhinoceros.
I think a lot of it is going to depend on your age of the earth view.
Okay.
Whether or not you believe that dinosaurs... The fossil records and the age that they say dinosaurs are, whether or not you believe that to be true, all of that other lens of like worldview is going to determine how you interpret some of this stuff.
Let me float something your way. See what you think. Yeah. What if? All right. So what if the reason that, some people will say, and I've heard this argument, the reason that all cultures have like dragons and monsters and things like that is because they'll go with the young earth view of humans existed with dinosaurs. And so it's the memory of that. Is it also possible that at some point people have, before the 1800s, discovered some of these fossils and then thought about existence of giant creatures and monsters and lizards? They could still have some knowledge that these creatures existed without ever having lived with them. Yeah. And that's where some of the legends and stories come from. Possible?
Yeah, it's possible.
Or aliens.
That's more probable.
I wish, man. Here's the thing. Do you remember we did a whole episode about aliens and there was all this stuff that was like, Congress is going to talk about this and blah, blah, blah. And then I feel like it just all fizzled. Like, where did the aliens go? Our producer says aliens are demons. Ha. We talked about it on that episode and why I don't think they are, but you'd have to go back and listen to that. Now, let's jump then into our main topic today.
Okay.
And our main topic today, Matt, originally this was going to be next week's topic to be even closer to the actual thing. But with the scheduling and getting Mike Lacona to come on, I bumped this topic up to this week. I want to talk about, and I know it seems like we've hit this to death, but I think this is a slightly different take on it. And this is about how we should morally acceptable as Christians, like how we can vote, especially with candidates. I know that sentence came out very strangely syntaxed.
I'm trying to follow you.
I want to start. All right. So the question that I had originally asked is like, is it morally acceptable as a Christian to vote for somebody who in a lot of ways you disagree with? And I said, like, hypothetically, let's say, as a Christian, there was a Hindu like Vivek Ramaswamy running, who their worldview is very different than Christians. They have a lot of different values. But let's say this was a candidate who, issue-wise, supported a lot of what you agreed with. Are you morally okay as a Christian to vote for them? Okay. Now, I do want to say it's going to be as a podcast from our church, Discovery Fellowship Church. As a nonprofit, we cannot support or tell you to vote or not vote for any specific candidate. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking they're being really weird and not saying they would vote, who they would vote for, something like that, we're happy to talk about that on a personal level, but we legally aren't able to talk about it from this podcast.
Right. And we don't want to tell you who to vote for.
I would want to tell you that anyway.
We might want to give you some principles to think through of how to vote.
Correct.
Right.
And I think that's fine.
Things to think through as you're considering and praying through who you're voting for individually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we cannot endorse positively or negatively a specific candidate. We can, however, endorse issues.
We can talk issue, we can talk policy, and then as a result, you can determine what candidate is on that side of that issue or policy on your own.
And we can then talk in that more, generic sense. Like I said, like if there was a Islamic candidate or a Hindu, like in that way, as a Christian, what does it look like? So let's start with that, Matt. I'll throw this over to you. As a Christian, what does it look like for us to vote for somebody who maybe we have a lot of fundamental disagreements with it? Is that okay?
Yeah. So I talked about this a few weeks ago and got a little bit of pushback from a couple people on the internet when I mentioned that the fact that I'm a Christ follower, the person who is running for a political position, me being a Christian doesn't necessarily determine who I'm voting for based upon their faith.
Right.
Right. So I had mentioned, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember the exact words, but essentially someone commented back and said, no, your faith, the fact that you are a Christ follower is the only thing or whatever that determines how you vote.
Yeah, I'll try to look up that comment.
And what I would lean towards is my biblical worldview affects every aspect of my life. And so when I'm voting for the president of the United States of America, I wish I was able to vote for someone who was a devout Christ follower and was going to uphold biblical morals, values, teachings in every aspect of everything. Sure, that would be fantastic. We haven't had that in a very, 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 very long time in this country.
Yeah, if ever.
And so I have to be careful and not say I'm voting for this person because I'm Christian. Because if that were the case, if I said you can only as a Christian vote for this person because their faith is this, I'm never going to be able to vote for at least any of the major political party candidates right now. And the reason I say that, and I know there are people out there like the guy who we talked about a couple weeks ago, who would say that you're not a Christian if you don't vote for a specific person.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. There was a screenshot I sent for you. So when we talked 2 weeks ago, we live reacted to the video of the user who said, if you're a Christian, you will never sin again, which was wild. We kind of reacted to that a lot of like, you are physically incapable of sinning as a Christian. He had a live stream running just a couple days ago, and I screenshotted it because I couldn't believe what I was reading, which was, he said, he said two things were on the text behind him in this live stream. And the first one was, I'm pulling it up so I can make sure I get his wording right. He said, Christians don't sin. Christians can't sin. If you still sin, you are not a Christian. And then below that it said, if you don't love Donald J. Trump, you are not a Christian. And I thought, wow.
So, all right, hang on.
Love is a weird word.
That's what I was going to go.
You got a good point. Okay, so what do you think?
We're called to love our neighbor. We're called to love our enemies. We're called as Christ followers to love the way that Jesus loved people. So absolutely, if I'm going to call myself a Christian, I need to show that by the way I love, right? The world will know that I'm his disciple by the way I love.
So maybe that's what he meant.
I'm sure that's not what he meant based upon his other videos.
Based off everything else we've seen and watching it for a second of like, okay, good point.
Let me get back to your original question.
Do you want to hear the actual comment exchange that you had? I found that from this other point.
Sure, let's go.
All right, because this is where you were saying that it's not. No, it's not calling you. Well, no, it is. This is somebody calling you out, right?
Yeah.
Because he said, I'm going to call this out. That's literally the first thing he says. Everything we do is based on Christ, including voting. We don't put our faith in anyone else, and we pray that God's will be done. And you responded, that's the hope. Unfortunately, I know far too many Christians who have placed their faith in their politics and their country. That might say they pray for God's will, but actually pray for theirs. And he said, for you to say this has nothing to do with your Christianity is wrong. I want to speak truth and love. Telling someone to vote what's best for the country, but not with Christianity is blasphemy.
That's what he said?
Is what he said. And then you said, both options are evil. To say I have to vote for one because I'm a Christian is where it's wrong. I vote based on my biblical worldview, not because I think he or she is good and following God. And they replied, I don't vote on people. The people are both not perfect. I vote on policy. And then they said, this candidate's policies are clearly against God's will.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think we agree, this person and I.
I think so.
In that I'm not voting for the person because I think they're more Christian than the other person.
Right.
That's a weird phrase to use, but I'm voting based upon policy and what, as a citizen of this country, is going to be best for this country. Now, my opinion of what best is going to be what's going to uphold some of these key biblical moral values and issues that I find to be super important. Now, what I find to be important might be different than what other Christians have the greatest value, or, whatever way you want to word it. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think through, because I would argue that neither of these two main candidates are pro-Christ.
Agreed.
Neither of these two main candidates are living their lives to his honor and glory,
right?
In line with his will, desire, commands, right? And so I can't say that because I'm Christian, I'm voting for this person because they're Christian.
Right.
And so at that point, their faith is not relevant to my voting.
I see what you're saying.
Their policy is, though.
Okay.
And I would agree with that from this person. And so that's why I say that I'm not voting for them because Christian.
Right.
I'm voting for them because potentially some policies from their platform is going to uphold some of the values that I have.
Now, I did just see something on Facebook, and this was posted rather snarkily, I'll say. It was a big graphic, and it said, notice how it's always, quote, vote according to biblical values, unquote, until it comes to welcoming the immigrant, helping the poor, feeding the hungry, bringing healthcare to the sick, forgiving debts, caring debt for our planet, laying down our swords, or loving our neighbors. So this was kind of a stab at Christians.
Yeah.
But I think we've talked about this before, and I think it's an interesting thing where neither candidate fully represents Christian values. And so you are having to vote for a candidate who supports putting into policy the biblical values that you value most, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Because we could say life, sanctity of life is a biblical value. And so and I think that is kind of almost one of the defining issues for a lot of people, and understandably so. Mm-hmm. And so if you say, well, that value is upheld by candidate A and not B, I'll vote for candidate A. But it's true that a Christian value is caring for the poor. And so if candidate A doesn't, I guess what I'm saying is, why do we want some of the values enshrined into governmental law, but not others?
Right. So let me ask a question to our listeners, maybe. Let's say candidate A was pro-choice, but everything else, every other major position and platform was so lined up with biblical mandates and ideas. And candidate B was pro-life, but every other position was so far from God.
Right.
Who would you vote for?
That's a good question for our candidates. And I've had or for our candidates, not for our, it's good for the candidates too. How could it be better? Because I was having a discussion with somebody, and I was saying, it almost, in some ways, I struggle if I should even vote for a candidate. Now, I will say, I think it is very important, but not necessarily a Christian virtue, but very important for us to vote on issues, because we have a direct say in how, we are given the opportunity to speak into the way our country is run. And I think as a Christian, it's a good thing that we exercise that right, especially when it comes to positions. I don't think, if you are a Christian and you say, I can in good conscience vote for either candidate for the president, I don't think that's wrong or sinful. And some people will say, no, you have to vote for somebody. You have to pick as a Christian. If you don't pick one, you're letting you're basically, in effect, voting for the other.
Right.
And it's I get what they're saying with that. But at the same time, me not doing something is not the same as me actively doing something. Right. So by not voting, maybe it's passively allowing for the other one, but that's different than me actively voting for the other one.
Yeah. It's frustrating when I heard this a lot in 2020 because I had some pretty big issues in 2020 and had lots of fun conversations with people about it. By fun, I mean, sometimes very frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not going to, and I'll use names in this situation because I'm not endorsing any candidates. This is an election in the past. But I was told by some believers, if you don't vote for Trump, you are voting for Biden.
Right.
I was like, no, because I'm not checking the Biden box.
Exactly.
If I check the Biden box, I'm voting for Biden. If I check the Trump box, I'm voting for Trump. If I check the fill in the blank box, I'm voting for the fill in the blank I'm checking, right?
Right. It's the actual commission versus omission, right?
And the argument is, well, you're taking away a potential vote for Trump. and therefore you're giving Biden a greater opportunity to win.
Right. Let's also talk about like, all right, let's say you wanted to be you're a person who's very pro-Trump and we live in Colorado. Does it really matter if you vote? Because he's not going to win the state, and because of the Electoral College, it doesn't do anything. Now, again, there's a lot of ballot issues and other very important things, like city council is going to matter. There's going to be judges that matter.
What if like 200,000 Christians in Colorado all thought the same thing and said, well, I can't in good conscience vote for Trump.
Right.
I'm not going to vote for Biden because he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. I can't do that.
Right.
And so if those 200,000 people all decided to vote for something else.
Right.
Could that have swayed the vote? Is that enough to sway it in Colorado? 200,000? I don't know what our numbers are here.
I don't know what our numbers are either.
Don't discourage people in Colorado. Get out there and vote, no matter
where you are. But see, you just is it okay? So let me ask you this question: is it okay for a Christian to not vote?
Yes.
Is that a sin?
But
okay.
I would say I don't necessarily think it's a sin one way or another to vote or not vote. What I think we have to do is we have to spend time in I think as a citizen of America, it's our responsibility and duty to vote.
Okay.
And so I would say that I would encourage you as an American to get out there and vote. I would encourage you as a Christian who has morals, values that you want to get out there and vote, because your vote does matter in that sense.
Okay.
Whether it's president or city council or Amendment 79, whatever it might be, your vote's going to matter and ultimately have an opportunity to put forth some of these more important issues that you might want in your state, in your country. I think of in Colossians when it talks about like everything I do it as unto the Lord.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to spend time in preparation for voting in a lot of prayer.
Okay.
Over who and what.
Okay.
Right. Because there's a lot of ballot issues, both locally in my county, bigger in my state, and some in my country. And then there's all the people for those positions that we're voting for. And so, yeah, it's my responsibility as a Christian and a citizen of America to vote. It's not a requirement though, if that makes sense. And so I'm not going to, if you on November 6th said, hey Matt, I just couldn't, I didn't vote.
Right.
Or maybe you just said I didn't vote for president.
Right.
Like, okay.
I understand. I
understand. I get that. You spent time thinking through and praying through it, and I understand that you couldn't in good conscience vote for the position of president this time around. Okay.
Now, to answer your other question, what the margin was. So in Colorado 2020, Biden got 1.8 million votes and Trump got 1.3 million. So about 500,000 people is where the difference is. And there was about an 86.8% turnout.
Wow.
So we actually had
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. And it's really interesting looking at like the map of which ones went where for our state. You can see we're not as solidly blue here as you would think, maybe.
Well, and that actually makes sense because my guess, most of our population is up and down the Front Range. And so that's probably where we're going to get most of our blue.
Yep.
Out in the eastern plains, when you get a little towards Kansas, it's practically Kansas West. And so that's going to be a little more conservative and Republican. And I think my guess would be a lot of like I'm just trying to think of the nice words to use here without offending anyone. I'll just say like more on the western slope. I think that picture actually showed that, right? Where it was more red there too. So, but Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, those are our big. What color is Colorado Springs area?
It's reddish, but there's a lot of blue nearby it. I don't know what.
I've seen it kind of change.
I don't know what
over the past several years a little bit. It seems like
I don't know our geography well enough because it's not a labeled map.
Right. Yeah, that's weird. Point that over to our producer Jeremiah, just so you can see.
Yeah. So which one?
See the look there.
You can see. I'm holding up. Everybody can see it on the screen too, where the map. But all right, so that's what I was thinking. That was the red spot. Focus on the families there. So
yeah, that's considered like the Bible Belt of Colorado. Right.
Yeah, that's but I think that's even starting to.
Yeah. We have mega churches. You have some big companies like Focus on the Family who are there. But yeah, Colorado is. Military bases. Yeah. Military down there.
That's true. So, okay. It's okay to, as a Christian, vote for somebody based off policy. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting directly. I recently saw a post from Mark Driscoll, famous pastor, who essentially said, you can't be a good Christian and vote for Kamala.
Okay.
What do you think about that? Can a Christian in good conscience vote for Kamala?
Here's where I think you have to, again, I'm not going to say yes, you can or should not vote for an individual person. So what I will say is you focus on the positions and policies that they stand for, right? And so generally speaking, from what I've seen and heard, there are several policies that I am against as a Christian and as a citizen.
Okay. But if somebody else was to say, as a Christian, here's the policies I'm for.
I know a few people like that. And some of those policies that they say they're for, I would push back on biblically.
Okay.
Now, there's this piece from the pastor emeritus at Moody.
Okay.
Talking about voting as a Christian this is from a while ago, 2012. It's weird to think that was several election cycles old. Yeah. So our producer real quick just brought up a good reminder when,
I was going to talk about that.
At a recent rally that she had, there were some people there who said Jesus is king.
Yep.
And she said,
I think you guys are at the wrong rally.
You're at the wrong rally.
Now, let's have a side, because that definitely looked very.
I'll get back to this Moody article.
Yeah, come back to the Moody article, because since that came up, that was one of the things I wanted to bring in from the news. It definitely was like, wow, that's a little bit harsh. And as a Christian, I don't know how you would support that. Now, if I wanted to be charitable, which maybe as a Christian, can we be charitable?
Yes.
Yes. Should we? Probably. But I don't.
But do I want to? Do I want
to? But okay, so let's think: is it possible, especially given how she handles live moments often, that in the moment it was more trying to be a joke of, this isn't a church rally, it's a political rally. Right. You should be at there's another political rally, not in a you're stupid and whatever. Not that you're not welcome here as a Christian, but, you guys are saying that this isn't that rally. There's that rally down the street or whatever. Is that a possibility?
Yeah. Well, so what was the rally down the street?
Was there, because she said something about that, right?
One, like it's a smaller one down there.
Right. I don't know.
Other smaller rally,
maybe it was like a church or something. Yeah, church rally.
Here's the thing. I'm going to make people mad.
Oh, let's get it.
I think that Donald Trump would agree with Harris in that situation.
Okay.
I am under the impression, based upon what I've seen and heard from both candidates, that neither of them actually think Jesus is king.
Right. Now, did you see the J.D. Vance one, though?
I did see that one where he said, that's right.
And I wonder if that was like a plant, almost 100%. Like, let's have somebody say it so we can have a good response, because that's a great contrast.
Yeah.
But that was kind of,
I might believe it from Vance, though.
Right.
Whereas here's what I'm concerned about.
Okay, let's hear it.
With Harris, we know where she stands.
Right.
In a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
With our friend Donald Trump, I don't know what he actually believes.
No.
Because it seems like he literally is trying to become all things to all people so that he might gain a vote. Yes. Right? Now, the difference between him and Paul is Paul's purpose was pointing people towards Christ. Paul's purpose was salvation.
Right.
our politicians' purpose is votes and power.
Right.
And so, I mean, we've talked about this. We've even heard Trump say things like, well, when I make mistakes, I try and just take care of them myself. I don't need God for that.
Right.
We've heard him say things like, what do I need saving from?
Right.
This tells me that, yes, while he might have grown up Presbyterian, like he has said many times, and in 2020, right before the election, he said, I now identify as a non-denominational Christian, right? Because he wanted to broaden that even more. I don't see or hear anything that seems to be Christ-like, which, according to Scripture, when we surrender our lives to Jesus, there is this life change by his grace in our life that should be evident.
Right.
There is fruit that I'm not seeing. I don't see from either of our candidates, because Harris, I believe, also grew up in the church as well. I don't know necessarily which one. Was she Catholic?
I think no, but her husband is Jewish, right?
Okay. There's a lot less faith and religious talk this time around.
Yeah.
Which
she did go to a church right after that rally, though. I think, is try to do
try
some
and make
damage
up for
control.
100%, yeah. And I also know that after the assassination attempt, I think the first one on Trump, he said, like, God has anointed him and saved him to make this country great again.
Yeah, I think he did something like that.
We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Is America God's primary priority?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is any political entity God's primary?
Primary is a weird word, because we do know biblically that God is in control of all politics, and that he is one who appoints leaders for the specific purposes and times. So primary is weird, but we do know God is in control.
Okay. Yeah. Which I think we might have like a listener mail. I actually read one this week that might ask that question that we can get to a little bit later. So all that to say, when we vote, sorry, I just got distracted. Our producer just messaged us and said, the next world order is God's primary focus as it brings in the Antichrist.
Perfect.
So, well, and okay, no, we're not going to get into that this morning. All right, let me go back to this movie article, you guys. We're going to focus.
And Return of Christ. Hey, that goes back to what we talked about on our global warming episode. If we destroy, if every human died, Jesus can't come back. So he'd have to come back before that happened.
So let's just destroy everything.
Tank everything.
Let's just nuke each other, is what you're saying.
And try to get Jesus to come back quicker.
So how should a Christian vote? This is by Erwin Letzer in 2012, voting with a Christian conscience.
I like him.
Christian conscience is what we're talking about here. So he says, and I agree with him completely, I refuse to endorse political candidates because, one, no one candidate is right on all the issues, or for that matter, wrong on all the issues. Yep. And two, the gospel should never be tied to a politician or a political party. You guys, I love that statement.
That's great.
Because if you think about Jesus and what he did, who did he invite to his table?
Tax collectors, sinners, prostitutes.
Yeah. There were a few different camps of political parties, for lack of a better phrase, in Jesus' day. So you had the Pharisees and Sadducees, right, who were kind of two sides of the same coin, but both not being great. Mm-hmm. It's a coin that's all beat up and not necessarily spendable. But I'm trying to remember exactly where it is in the Gospels, but I think it's in Matthew. Matthew, we know he was the tax collector who Jesus called. And he mentioned, in talking about the 12 disciples, talking about who Jesus called to follow him, he mentioned only by title two people, a tax collector and a zealot.
Yep.
Which at that time, the tax collectors were pro-Roman control.
Yep.
And the zealots were anti-Roman control. Jesus invited each side, like extreme sides of what was happening politically in that region, into his camp. So like, I can't say, no, Jesus is only for like one side of something.
Right.
Like I think Jesus is more for him Jesus is more for God's kingdom and God's glory,
right?
Not any individual citizenship or country's glory and kingdom, right? We're told that we're not citizens. Our primary citizenship is in heaven. So if I view everything through that lens, through the gospel lens, then I'm not going to be so pro one person or even one party because I'm pro Jesus.
Right.
Right. And so I think we have to view it through that. And now being pro Jesus, you might say, because of that, I have to vote this way.
Right.
Great.
Yep.
Do it. Not because you're pro Harris or pro Trump, but because you're pro Christ. Like that's, as a church, we're allowed to endorse one candidate. I'm going to endorse Jesus, right?
There we
Like
go.
that's who we're allowed to endorse, right? So here's what he says. There's certain issues that we need to, and convictions that we need to look at. So I'm going to mention these and then let you decide who you vote for from there, right?
I like that.
Short answer to your question, can me as a Christian vote for someone who's not a Christian, who might be from a different world religion, but have some similar policies? My answer is going to be yes, the short of it.
Okay.
Yes, I can vote for Vivek Ramaswamy if he ever ran.
Okay.
Yes, I can vote for, this is going to offend some people, potentially someone who might be Islam.
Right.
Because again,
all right, but what about if they're a Democrat? I mean, that's worse than all those.
okay, so
that's what some people would say.
100%. They would. They absolutely would, and it's hilarious.
Would. Okay,
here's what matters.
Okay, I like this.
Character and integrity. Proverbs 29. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people mourn. The king by judgment establishes the land, but he that receives gifts overthrows it. If a ruler listens to lies, all of his servants are wicked. So integrity matters. Character matters.
I don't think any of the options have character or integrity,
100%.
though.
So let's get into some things that maybe we can see in some of our candidates. Sanctity of human life.
Okay.
Psalm 139, right? Talks a lot about how God formed our inward part, knit us together in the womb, which means that we are known and loved by God at conception. Sanctity of life matters. And we as a church believe that greatly, right? Which is why I mentioned that one earlier as if sanctity of life, if pro-choice versus pro-life, but everything else,
right?
How would you vote? It's tricky. The next thing he mentions, same-sex marriage or civil unions among same-sex couples. That one matters because scripture tells us that our sexual relationships are between one man and one woman in the context of a marriage for a lifetime. So anything outside of that might go against that potentially.
That's interesting. Both candidates are actually super supportive of same-sex marriage.
They are
in this election.
Okay, so far we're 1 for 3 where we can see a difference between the two sides. Okay, number 4, freedom for religious speech is what this person says. Freedom for religious speech. And
I think that's a good one.
Acts chapter 4. So they called them and charged them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John answered them, whether it's right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than God, you must judge. For we cannot speak of what we have seen. We cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard, right? Like I have to speak about Jesus. I'm not going to not.
Right.
So I don't think, well, I mean, if you look at the rally, maybe Harris did not want me to speak about Jesus, at least during her speech, which honestly, let's be fair. If I were giving a sermon on a Sunday morning and someone stood up or shouted from the congregation and said something contrary to what I was talking about at the moment, I'd be like, hey, not the time or place.
Right.
So giving her the benefit of the doubt, maybe not the time or place, but that's beside the point. Number 5, racial equality. Acts chapter 17, he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth. Revelation 5, and by your blood you ransom people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. You've made them a kingdom of priests to our God. So racial equality matters. At least publicly, both of the primary candidates are for racial equality.
Right.
So, all right. So, hey, there's another one. Check. National security. Nehemiah chapter 4 is what he's quoting here. And they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and cause confusion in it. And we prayed to our God and set a guard as protection against them day and night. So as a citizen, I want national security.
Yeah.
Right? What that looks like, how that is brought into effect, that's to be determined, I suppose. And the last one that he quotes, again using Nehemiah though, taxation and government spending.
Yeah.
We have borrowed money for the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. We are forcing our sons and daughters to be slaves, and some of our daughters have already been enslaved. But it is not in our power to help it, for other men have our fields and our vineyards. That's an interesting thing. Are we slaves to government because of taxation?
Ooh, that's a whole other topic. I would say that kind of a subcategory or another aspect of it is just how is the economy in general.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, that's probably one of the biggest things
right now, especially
that people are thinking of when they're going to vote.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So as a Christ follower and as a citizen secondarily of the United States of America, it's my responsibility to think through, pray through these major issues, decide which candidate, if any, is going to be what I can in a clear conscience vote for as the representative of me, right? Because ultimately the president is supposed to be a representative of the people. Our elected politicians are representative of the people. So for the next 4 years. Right. Right. And so my encouragement is, one, don't look at either candidate as one that represents Christ well. Right. Because they don't. So two, pray through some of these key issues, character, integrity, sanctity of life, civil union, all those types of things that matter to God and that matter to you, and then decide who is it or which party, for a lot of people, that's what it's coming down to, is going to uphold some of these the most. Right. That you, in a good conscience, based upon your understanding of scripture, you can vote for. And so that would be the encouragement.
I love that. Well, so as we put a pin in this, wrap it up, who do you think's going to win? Right now, if you had to make a prediction, do you have a thought of what you think is going to happen?
Based on the early voting that is happening so far, I think Trump has a 2-point lead, which is shocking because
in general, Republicans don't early vote.
Yeah.
And if that's electoral, to answer your question, producer in the room,
I think this
who's going to win the election.
Yeah. I think this is going to be super close.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very contentious.
Yeah. Did you see though, Pennsylvania has said they will not be able to have an answer the day of the election?
Yeah. So it's super frustrating.
In which case that we won't know on election day who the winner is.
Because chances are it is going to come down to just one swing state it's going to come down to the final.
It might come down to, and the conspiratorial or cynical side says each side could be saying this because they want to try to sway the votes their way and make their person win. I hope not.
Yeah, it's weird to me that in our advanced society that we live in,
yes,
we can't get immediate results for things like this. It's weird to me, and I know the left is going to be angry at me for this one. It's weird to me that it's not a simple identified process to be a citizen of the United States of America, to prove that I am very quickly and simply.
Right. I scan an ID, a computer screen pops up, I tap the things, and then I go.
Right. Because I would never expect to make my way over to another country, not go through the process of citizenship, but be able to vote. Right.
No, that makes no sense at all. Like, voter ID seems like the most basic idea of like common sense. But the problem is, being the United States, each state gets to decide how they do things. Right. And this is unfortunately constitutionally how we're built. Of the states have the bigger power, so each state can have its own complete process.
Right. It's great that states have their own individual power in a lot of ways, but if we're to be the United States, I think that united word is key, in which there should be at least a few elements in place for that actual unity to happen, where, hey, for this one thing, because it matters so much to the entire nation, let's maybe do it one way, consistent across the board.
Well, you know what? You almost feel like, at least for the president, which is a federal thing, you could say for the presidential office, here's how we all vote. Yeah. You guys are able to use this system if you want. I guess you could have a secondary system for your own elections.
Yeah.
Maybe they do that.
Right.
And then, because then everybody will be like, well, we might as well just use the big one.
Yeah. You can use this system for all of your stuff too.
We'll set up a super secure whatever. All right. Let's do it. Why don't they let us decide these things?
I don't want to decide things.
Well, let us know.
I just like to say controversial things on a podcast.
Let us know what you think, how you feel about who, not necessarily who you're going to vote for. I don't care about that. But like, as a Christian, how do you approach this issue of voting? You can email us at podcast@dfchurch.com. We did have a couple fun listener mail this week. We got one that says, in reading Psalm 97, I think this is one you were talking about, Matt. It speaks of God being in charge of the world, ruling and reigning, praised above all other gods. However, as I look around the world, I don't see it. I know in my head he is, but with the evil in the world, not just political, but people's actions, including my own, I struggle to see with my eyes and heart how he continues to allow evil to go on seemingly unchecked.
Wow.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's the age-old question, right? Why do bad things happen to good people?
Like we talked about with Job.
Mm-hmm. But it's different than that question, because I think this listener who sent the email in would agree that people aren't good. Mm-hmm. So why do bad things happen to good people? Well, there aren't good people. So that's a question that we can't really answer because it doesn't actually exist. So is it the question of why if God reigns over all the earth?
Okay.
I'm asking this question.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. If God actually reigns over all the earth, then why is there still evil, right? Yeah. If God reigns, why would a tsunami kill 100 million people?
Right.
If God is in control, then why would cancer take the lives of young children, right? And so it's a hard question to wrestle with. I agree. Really sometimes in my day-to-day life, I don't necessarily see it, but those are also the days where I'm not looking for the good. I'm dwelling on the bad. Now, God, for some reason of love, has decided that, yes, he does reign. He does control. He is omni all the things. Omnipresent, omni
all the things.
Omniscient, omnibenevolent, we could agree on, I think. But what that means is that because of his all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving, all-goodness, he's given us the opportunity to live our lives and to choose, right? In fact, it says in scripture, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, which implies that we do have a choice to live for God or against God. And because of that, junk happens. And what we know from the character of God and from scripture, it actually grieves God, right? Scripture tells us that he would rather no one would die.
Right.
But he's given us the choice to die. So, I mean, that's a weird way to phrase it. Because of the choice he's given us, death has entered our world. Sin has entered our world. Evil has entered our world. Bad people exist. Guilty is charged. And because bad people exist, bad things happen to others, right? There's evil, there's wickedness, there's corruption on every front, but God still reigns. See, what we get to do is we get to look at the bad that surrounds us now, and we know with confidence that this is not the end.
Right.
That this is not how it remains. That we have a hope and a peace that Christ will return, that he will make all things new again, and that when that time comes, there will be no more hurt, no more weeping, no more death, no more pain, no more sorrow, no more tears, right? That all things will be made new and right, and we get to experience that beauty of creation as was original in the garden before that first sin happened, before that one choice was made. And what's awesome is because of the choice we make now for Christ, we'll get to be a part of that. Or, I mean, the warning would be if you make the decision now against Christ, then the opposite's true for you. You're not going to be a part of that. You're going to be a part of the eternal weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Right.
Right. An eternal separation from God or the opportunity for an eternal life with him. And so yeah, the encouragement is, yes, God reigns over all the earth. Psalm 97. It's a beautiful picture. It's a beautiful reminder. And it's a source of deep, I think this is actually in Psalm 97, a deep comfort and deep joy because we know that he's in control. Now, sometimes that means that we have to force ourselves to dwell on that in the midst of the hurt, if that makes sense.
I love that. Well, I also had asked last week we talked about our top 3 books of the Bible, and I sent that out what are your favorite books of the Bible? We got a few back. Alan says, my particular favorite is Matthew, specifically chapter 23, the 7 woes. This was the subject of the sermon given the day I was saved and made Jesus especially real for me. My other favorite revelation, not a lot of people understand it, but it is simple if you take the time to read it, in John.
Okay.
We got an email from Sarah. It says, my favorite books, Esther and Ruth, girl power. And then did
Love it.
I love Revelation and Genesis too. And then Rita said, hello, my favorite book is 1 John. It's so strong in God's love for us.
Nice.
So I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Getting a little bit of other people's. Nobody said Leviticus.
Strange.
Weird.
If your favorite book of the Bible is Leviticus, let us know.
Please
We'd love
email us and let us know why.
We'd love to celebrate you.
I know, because that's awesome. Anything that of like God's word that you love, that's great.
Yep.
We're happy for you.
Yeah.
Now, that is all the time we have for today. But remember, please email us, podcast@dfchurch.com with your questions for Dr. Mike Licona. We're going to have a real great episode next week. But take some time, look for somebody to connect with this week. Tell them about who God is and what he can do in their life. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.